guys, welcome back to Magic TV. My name's Craig. It is 9 o'clock, which means it's time for a Talk Magic, and I am here today with one of the most well-known performers in the UK. I did a poll of who people would like to see interviewed, and second on the list was this gentleman here. He was above people like David Blaine. He was above people like David Copperfield, and that's because you are a bit of a legend. I am, of course, talking of the one and only Lee Hathaway. How you doing, mate?
What an introduction! Oh my god!
True though.
I've got to find out who these people are that are. that must have been the night when I got really drunk and voted about 500 times on your website.
It might have been you, but I didn't want to say anything. But how you doing? I mean,
what I want to know, Craig, is who was number one.
Who was it? I do know this. Oh my gosh. Richard Sanders.
Okay. Bloody Richard Sanders every time he beats me.
it's those Canadians, isn't it? They pretend they're nice, and you know.
Funny enough, talking of Richard Sanders, I thought, wouldn't it be lovely to do extreme burn at the moment with with some Enigma code papers, and then change them to the new £50 notes with Alan Turing on them. As a little tribute thing. I thought that'd be really cool. Yeah, you just reminded me of Richard Sanders when it just reminded me of that when he said that. I thought that today, because they've just come out today, the new £50 notes with Alan Turing on the front of them. Yeah,
that'd be very cool. That'd be very
good.
Nice, because a lot of people, completely off the subject, a lot of people think you can't do extreme burn with the new polymer notes, but you can. Works just as well.
Yeah, I haven't tried it, but in my mind it would work. I can't see why it wouldn't work. Yeah, our polymer notes are not great actually. The Australian ones are much better. The stuff ours are made out of isn't great at all. But I haven't seen the 50 yet. I might go and get one tomorrow if I can. I'll have to dust off the savings jars in the boat and see if I can muster up 50 quid after a year of no work.
Well, I've got to say, you have got the best backdrop of any interview I've ever done. I mean, this is amazing. The only person who comes close to beating you is when I interviewed John Archer. And for some random reason that he never even mentioned this on the interview, he had the White House behind him the entire time. The White House, obviously, American president, had White House. And it was around about the time that it was Biden and Trump. And he never referenced it. And I had so many people in the comments going, why is John Archer sitting in front of the White House? And I'm like, I have no idea.
Zoom background.
Yeah, Zoom background, right? But the reason you're sitting where you are,
it's real. It's not real.
This is your home. You live on a boat. How cool is that? I mean, that's amazing, right?
Yeah, it's been great over the last year. I mean, that's been one of my saving graces. Actually, is being on the boat, because I've been able to. Previous to having the boat, I bought the boat 3.5 years ago, and prior to that, I lived in a flat in South London, which I bought about 2007, something like that. And I was a nice flat, but I think I'd have gone stir crazy sitting in that flat on my own for the last year. So the boat has been the one saving grace, because I've still been able to move. I've been able to change scenery and be in nice places. So for me, it's been really therapeutic having the boat for the last year. Yeah, without a doubt.
Fantastic. And we're going to talk about this in a bit, but you're obviously now monetizing the boat. You're doing magical cruises, and you're doing stuff for magicians, and we'll get to that in a bit. But before we do, I want to find out more about you. I want to find out more about you as a performer, as a magician. For people that are watching this, I want to talk more about Lee Hathaway, for those people that don't know who you are. Is that all right, Lee?
Absolutely. Go for it.
Cool. Yeah. So let's start off at the very beginning. It feels like you've been in magic forever. What's your origin story? I mean, when did you get into magic? Was it like your typical
it was probably
story?
When Reginald D. Scott came to me and said, "I'm looking to write a book." No, I'm not that old. Paul Gordon might remember that very well, but I'm not that old. Oh dear, that'll be that's me blocked on Facebook, isn't it?
That's right. That's blocked you for a year now.
I've been trying for years, Craig. He refuses to block me.
No, I've been blocked a few times, so I'll give you some tips later.
I love him. Do you know, it's interesting. I mean, it is interesting actually, especially like talking to someone like yourself that sort of loves magic and has done magic for so many years, because there is a real I mean, the internet changed so many things for so many people, but it really did shift sort of what you had to do to get into magic. When I was a kid, I love magic since I can remember. You know, I used to, even when I saw the kids entertainers with the breakaway wand, I wanted one of those. You know, it's just fascinated by it. But when I was a kid, all you had on television was Paul Daniels and Wayne Dobson, you know, which, don't get me wrong, legends, but there was no access. Nowadays it's like everyone knows, you know, all these names and these things people I've never heard of, and websites and all the rest of it, and there was none of that at all. It was a real struggle to sort of be interested in magic. It almost felt a bit closed, you know, and even the public domain magic sets and books that were available weren't really the nitty-gritty good stuff, you know. And I used to go to the library, and what's the old library code that was it 78.3 or something like that, with the old microfiche codes that you look up the books that they had on magic, you know. And I can remember my local library had maybe 3 books on magic. One was like a Ugard and Brow book, encyclopedia of card tricks, and there was a couple of others, and I sort of went through those and devoured those, but what really flipped it for me in terms of sort of opening this world was I think a book that Peter Eldin wrote called The Pocket Book of Magic, and I've still got it. I've got it on the boat right here, and it's a great little book. It's got some really cool effects in it, but what it had in it, which was the real eye-opener for me, in the back of it there was a list of 3 or 4 magic dealers and shops in London, which I didn't know about, and I'd never discovered before. So that was, you know, around the age of 12, sort of 11, 12, I started going to those shops, and I was able to go and visit Alan Allen's magic shop, which, do you remember that place?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
I mean, it was amazing, wasn't it? It was like, I mean, literally, if you had to create a real life version of a magic shop in Harry Potter, that would be it. I mean, everything exploded, buzzed, banged. There was crap all over the place. There were boxes everywhere, and you know, and it was just a you know, and this weird little old man sitting behind the counter with a safety pin through his head. But I can remember going in there, you know, at like 12 years old, and asking if he had any Marlowe books, because I'd heard about this guy called Marlowe that I wanted to know about, you know, and he sort of went out the back and shuffled around, and after about 20 minutes brought out some of the what the Marlowe book it's called, Future Miracles, or Future, remember the little book, the little photocopied booklets?
Yeah, Future Miracle, I can't remember, but I know exactly.
Miracle series or something, whatever. Yeah, something like that. But there was Marlowe did about sort of 20 or 30 of these pamphlets, or possibly even more, of like various different things. And so I was able to grab those, and so that started my interest. And then I went to Davenport's, and they had like a little magic club every weekend for sort of 20 or 30 keen young magicians, called the Demon Club, which I joined, and I used to go every Saturday with my £5 pocket money, and sort of and that was kind of my introduction into sort of, you know, learning more about magic and starting, you know. And I always loved reading when I was a kid. I was a big reader, even before magic, you know. I was taught to read, you know, that was a sort of you know, a good stepping stone to educate yourself, which was, you know, I thank my parents for, really, you know, was the fact they made me read. But so rather than buy all the sort of crappy tricks and stuff, you know, one trick, I read books, you know. I was obsessed by books, and I used to love magic books by post, and getting all the Kaufman books, and you know, and all that kind of stuff, and you know, and going further back, Dover published some great books, the Hofzinter stuff, and Anman, and all that kind of thing. So all the Carl Falk self-working series, and you know, all the rest of it they published. So that was kind of my introduction into magic, you know. And it's funny, you know, and stop me if I'm going on too much, but I'll just tell you one more thing. What's really funny is, so every weekend I'd get on the tube from Mill Hill East, which is where I lived, which is right at the top of the Northern Line, and I'd get the tube for like 30-40 minutes, and I'd arrive in Charing Cross, and I'd go to Davenport's. And if you've ever been into the tube station at Charing Cross, you'll know there's this kind of black and white tapestry of like the Normans and stuff like that on the walls. I think it's like almost like a black and white version of the Bayeux Tapestry or something, but it covers the entire tube station, and it's very it's very unique. It's like, you know, you're in Charing Cross Station. There's not another station like it. And the funny thing is, even now, if I go through Charing Cross Station, I get a little spark of excitement as the tube enters the station and I see that mural. You know, it just makes me feel excited, because I'm like, oh, you know, that there was that buzz that I used to have as a kid of like, I've arrived here. Yeah. So that was kind of my introduction to magic. Yeah, but it was very different. You had to hunt stuff out, didn't you? You really had to go and look for things and try and find them out. Now it's like, you know, the internet's a wonderful thing, and it's done some brilliant things. But one of the for me, I think it's you know, access to information is brilliant. And it means that, you know, we've got a lot more creators and a lot more great people that might not have got into magic, but I do question, and I mean, I'd be interested to see what you think about this. I do question, when information's so readily available, whether people value it enough, you know, and whether they give it the respect and the time that it deserves.
I think you're right. I know when I first got into magic, I didn't have much money, so when I bought a book or something, I devoured it. Like, I learned every single trick. And I think these days it's kind of instant gratification. You can get so many secrets so quickly. Downloads are so cheap. You can get so much stuff on YouTube, and there's so many new tricks coming out all the time that you go and get yourself a book. You might just learn one or two of the routines, skip everything over because, oh, no, there's nothing there for me. And because you're on to your next thing. I think back in the day, if I bought something, I knew that was going to be the first thing that was going to be the last thing I got for probably 3 or 4 weeks. And I was going to damn well make sure that I worked it in, even if it wasn't that great.
Yeah. And I think there's a virtue to that as well, in the sense of like, and I sound like some old git now, but it's you know, I sound like some in a sense of, I see people that have done that and they know some really cool stuff and they're really good at that advanced stuff. But learning all of those, you know, if you go through things like 13 Steps to Mentalism or Royal Road, or, you know, any of those basic books, and you learn everything in it, you'd be amazed how many times that's useful at some point, you know, that you don't think about, you know, or you know, the knowledge that you acquire through doing that. I remember I was doing a I was helping Matthew Lamotte with his close-up act for the Circle, and he wanted to do something with the silk. And I said, well, why don't you do this? This is in, like, you know, Supreme Magic's book. Supreme Magic did those wonderful little pamphlets, didn't they? Lewis Ganson published them. Yeah. And I showed him this silk thing, and he was really like blown away that I knew anything about silk magic, you know, because I don't do silk magic. Haven't done it for years, you know. But at some point, I went and learned a load of stuff about silk magic. You know, I know about dove magic. You know, never done it, but I know. But I've read Ian Adair's, you know, the encyclopedia of dove magic, because it was something that was available, so I know what it's about. You know, but so I think things like that, you know, the internet allows you to sort of, whether that's, I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing, but it allows you to sort of jump barriers and go, right, I just want to, you know, do this, and that's it, you know.
And I think it's why sometimes tricks get released that are very close to tricks that have been released in the past. I think it's because people, you know as well as me, we stand on the shoulders of giants, and because learning is accelerated, people might completely miss the Royal Road to Card Magic, Bobo's Coin Magic, 13 Steps to Mentalism, whatever it may be. They'll completely skip those and they'll learn some amazing stuff, but from other places. And so they won't have that sort of foundational knowledge, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know. I do wonder that, Craig, sometimes when I see stuff that's released, and it's not always the case, but I see things that are released, I'm like, and I think to myself, God, have you like read any Marlowe or Hofzinser or, you know, Vernon or stuff? Because really, you know, it's like, you know, to think that's an original idea is a bit naive, really, you know, in some respects. And you might have changed this or that, but it's like, you know, that stuff's been done and dusted a million, you know. Do you remember? I remember someone telling me that Marlowe used to get really frustrated if he hadn't thought of every possible method for a routine, you know. But yeah, I mean, I struggle with it, but at the same time, you know, evolution of ideas and sort of evolution of an art form and that sort of thing, I think is a good thing, you know. So it's you know, it's a natural progression. We are where we are, you know, and it's good that people are creating stuff, and it's good that people are coming up with ideas, and it's good that, you know, even if necessarily it's been done before, like you point out, the fact that someone's actually thought of it, you know, is a creative process, you know. So I try to be open-minded about it, but it does occasionally. I'm disappointed when I see a really clear-cut example of someone who's just sort of bypassed all those stages and just not learned any of the foundations of magic, because I think that's really important, you know, and to know and to have at least an understanding of where you've come from, what and you know, and the giant, and as you said, we're standing on the shoulders of giants. It at least be nice if people acknowledged those a bit and understood who they are and what they achieved, you know.
Well, we have a lot of people on this channel that are newer into magic. What advice would you give them? Like, would you say take a step back, don't try and devour everything, look at some of the older stuff and really kind of go deep with it? What advice would you give somebody that's
Sorry, Craig, did you say people that are new to magic?
Yeah, newer into magic.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it depends on, you know, it depends on what they want to achieve with their magic. You know, I had a good discussion about this on what's that thing, Clubhouse, that the other night, you know, that's become a popular app, and that I think Colin McLeod was on, Colin Cloud, you know, and Colin was saying that he was very disappointed magicians don't push themselves and progress and try and be original and that sort of stuff, and I pulled him up on it a bit. And don't get me wrong, I like Colin a lot, you know, we've been friends for a long time, but you know, some people just want to be a hobbyist, you know, some people just want to do magic for a hobby, some people want to be a professional, you know. I've always wanted to be a close-up magician and perform at gigs, you know. I'm really happy doing that. I don't want to be on television, I don't want to be, you know, David Blaine or something. I know where my level is, and I'm happy doing that. And that, you know, so I think first of all, in terms of, you know, advice to new people, which is going back, is kind of know what you want to do in magic, and don't be embarrassed, or, you know, or feel that you're not pushing yourself enough. If all you want to do is get some tricks off the internet and learn them and impress your mates, great, you know, go for it. There's no harm in that. The harm, I suppose, is if you try and, you know, is when people start charging money for it. That's kind of what upsets me. You know, it's like, if you want to get some tricks, go down the pub, entertain your mates, go for it, mate. But if you're charging money for it, you know, and it's more than, you know, a few drinks at the bar, you know, or a free meal or something, then you're talking about, okay, you're going to be professional at this. So then you know, then there are plenty of things you need to consider, you know. And I see, you know, this is why they've got me on, isn't it? Because now I'm going to be controversial. I see so many people who apply for gigs on things like Gigshare and go and are advertising themselves for jobs, who I think, you know, who I just think do not have the first clue as to what it means to be a professional magician, and to really be good at that job. And you know, so that's where I kind of have an issue with it. But so in terms of advice, first of all, you know, don't think that you can go down the pub, you know, going down the pub or the bar or something and doing some magic with people, and everyone goes, oh my god, you're amazing. No one's got any benchmark. Everyone's going to go, oh, you're amazing. Doesn't mean you can go out and do a wedding the next day, or you can go out and do, you know, a party the next day, you know. So it annoys me when I see people charge, you know, applying for. I remember one time I saw this one guy, and I won't mention any names, but there was, you know, one on this, you know, like Facebook have got these gig share pages. One guy applied for this job in a shopping centre for like 50 quid for the day, you know, and do a burnout was. The next day he's applying for £1,000 cabaret at the, you know, at the Grand in Brighton or something. Now, how can you be both things? Do you know what I mean? You know, it's like, that's ludicrous. You cannot possibly be both of those things, you know. It's like there's no way. So yes, that's, I mean, that's from the commercial point of view. From the just from the purely learning point of view of magic, I think that, you know, magic's given me a lot of joy, and it's given me a lot of pleasure over the years. And one of the great things about it is it's got this wonderful community of people around it, you know. And yeah, people can piss you off and get me nervous, but actually there's a real good support network in magic, you know. And one of the things I've always loved, Craig, and you've probably found this as well, is you can travel anywhere in the world, you know, whether I go to Prague or Budapest or Milan or anywhere, and instantly you've got friends and you've got people you can hang out with, and you've got, you know, and that's a really, really cool thing to have, you know, just because you do magic, you know, what a wonderful thing to own and have anywhere in the world, you know. So I think try not to shit on your own doorstep is a good bit of advice, you know, if you're going to get into it in a, you know, in a serious way, because the magic community, you know, as well, you know, is, you know, people talk and everyone knows each other, you know, and you might not think, you know, so and so knows so and so, but people find out stuff, so it's worth respecting the community that you've become a part of. And you know, it sounds so cliched, doesn't it? When the next thing I'm going to say, it sounds so cliched because it's advice that's given over and over again, and I was given it when I was a kid, and you wonder what it means. But that old cliche of sort of be yourself, you know, is you know, it's tried and tested, it's done and done again, and I think it's one of those things that you don't quite know what it means until you discover it as a performer, or until you discover it as a magician. But you know, just to know yourself and be honest with yourself, and know that, you know, I'm not Lance Burton. I'm not going to produce doves and do this. You know, this is my character, this is my personality, and that's what, you know, and that's what I can be good at. You know, I think is really valuable. So that would I guess be my advice to people new getting into magic, you know, is to sort of know yourself and know what you're good at, and also, and, you know, and try and have some respect, not just for the community but for the art around you, and for the people around you as well.
Completely agree, 100%. Let me ask you a question. We talked about how as a kid you went to London, you went to the Demon Magic Club. Your name has been synonymous with the Magic Circle for a very long time. Were you in the Young Magic Circle?
Well, the Young Magic Circle didn't exist when I was a kid.
Okay.
That was an initiative, I think, that came around the sort of late 90s, early 2000s. I don't actually know the date, but the YMC didn't exist. So the Demon Club was really all we had. And I mean, I still speak to the old Demon Club members. There were a core of about 20 or 30 of us, and most of us are now professional magicians, and many of them have won competitions and gone on to great things. There's all the names on there are good magicians these days, and so we've got a sort of real bond because of that. We've done a couple of reunion shows in the West End, actually, you know, and we've invited the Davenport family along because you know, Fergus and Betty Davenport and Bill and Roy, and I mean, they really helped us. If they weren't around to give us that space, to give us a studio every weekend to go and hang out in and learn magic, and you know, then you know, that was a really valuable thing. And you had to be really into magic. It wasn't like the YMC is great, but it's very accessible. So you get your great, really good kids there, you know, and some of them have gone on to become good magicians and stuff, you know. And again, you know, Ben Hart was a member of the YMC, Luke Osland was a member of the YMC, you know, and there's many more. Megan was a member. Megan, who you mentioned earlier, was a member of the YMC. But that was almost a bit after my time, actually. I think by the time I sort of knew about the YMC, I think I was past 18 and sort of, you know, I was invited to go and talk there and help out. But so what we had the Demon Club, and the other thing we had was the Reading Junior Day. Do you remember the Reading Junior Day?
I do. Legendary. Yeah.
So we used to so every year there was like which became the Magic Circle's J Day, which they did every 2 years, which was like the competition for youngsters. But yeah, I went to a few of the Reading Junior Days, and I don't want to miss anyone out here. My memory is a bit vague, but I know John Palfreman was involved in organising them, and someone I'm going to miss who was a real stalwart in helping organise those and put them together, and someone will write in or tell us, I hope. but yeah, there was a few. No, but there was a few guys who really worked their back off to put those on, you know, and it was a great thing for the youngsters in magic at the time, because there wasn't anything else, you know. Yeah, I can remember being there with, you know, Bobby Bernard and you know, all those guys, and you know, so that was kind of my youth sort of experience of magic. We didn't. The YMC wasn't around at the time. But I always wanted to be a member of the Magic Circle. I always wanted to, the Magic Circle sort of held that, when I was a kid, it was like the Magic Circle was like this sort of mysterious, incredible thing that, you could possibly be a member of, that only a few people were. And it was like almost Sonic, and I always wanted to, dreamt of one day being a member of it. Yeah. I mean, as well, the reality is very different, but that doesn't detract from the fact that there's still that perception in people's minds, so.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I want to talk more about the Magic Circle in a bit, but let me ask you a question. Did you go straight into full-time professional magic when you finished whatever education you were doing? Did you ever have a proper job? I'm sure.
That's a good question, actually. That's a really good question. Because not many people know this. But no, I never thought of doing magic for a living. It just didn't occur to me that it was a thing to do. I just always loved it and was passionate about it. And when I was like 17, 18, I used to go and work the tables around Jongleurs nightclub, which was like my first real proper paid gigs. And one of the great experiences of that, it was through John Gordon's Magic Works, which he owned with Jack Delvin. And I used to get 150 quid a night, and I used to do Friday and Saturday, sometimes a Sunday night as well, and I'd work all around the tables in Jongleurs before the comedians came on. And one of the great things about that was that we used to get to hang out with I'm going back now nearly 20-25 years. We used to get to hang out, I was in the dressing room with Lee Evans and Bill Bailey and Joe Brand and all these people, and I was hanging out with them and then watching them on stage. So that was like almost worth, now when I look back on it, that was kind of more value than the money I was earning, was seeing all these people on stage. But yeah, but that was a good training ground, because it was a rowdy sort of drunk crowd, and so I got to a bit like, I don't want to compare myself to Paul Daniels here. I think that'd be terrible. But a bit like when you see Paul Daniels' performance style, and that he grew up in the working men's clubs. When you see my style, and again, I'm not by no means comparing myself to Daniels, but I'm just saying that I learned to do magic close up in a bolshy crowd, and I just got a phone call from Zach the other day, because he said, that I've got this gig I need covered, and it's quite a bit of a drunk, leery crowd, and I know you'd be good at it, because I can cope with that. Whereas, you without mentioning names, but I'm sure you can imagine there's many close up magicians who do some beautiful magic, but I would never put them in front of a bunch of piss people, so that's where I learned to perform. And at the time I was earning 150 quid a night. Some weeks I was earning more than my dad those weeks, because my dad was a postman. There was a few weeks when I was earning more than my dad at that age, but I never thought of doing it for a living. It just never really occurred to me, even when I was doing gigs and stuff. And then I moved to Manchester. I came out as gay, and that was a kind of a big change in my life, because I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, and that I was discovering all of that, which back in the sort of early 90s was even in the last 20 years, the way that people's views on stuff has changed is quite dramatic. So I worked for some mobile phone companies for a while, and then I met my best friend, who's still my best friend, who lives around the corner just now, actually, and he was fixing computers, and we moved to Brighton, because Brighton had a big gay scene, and that went in our early 20s, and we set up a computer business, which we had for about nearly 8 years. Most of my 20s was running computer shops. We at the peak we had 3 computer shops, and they were specialist computer shops. We used to build like really designer computers and stuff, and they were very successful. We drove around Brighton in a Rolls Royce with the plate Dr. Tech, and we had these sort of quirky things. I themed them on. That's really interesting you asked me this question, because I don't often talk about this, but so I themed them on. I don't know if I remember reading in the Guinness Book of World Records that the most successful retailer in the world ever is Richer Sounds, right? Or was Richer Sounds. And it may have been surpassed now, but at the time it was Richard Sounds. And the quirky thing about Richard Sounds was they had these really tiny shops that were like warehouse shops. So I themed our shops on Richard Sounds because I thought, who better to copy than the most successful retailer in the world ever. So all our shops were quite quirky, and I made everyone, instead of having pens, I made everyone write with feathers. And we used to give like tea and cucumber sandwiches away, and they were very eccentric. But yeah, so for nearly 9 years till I was about 30, we had, Jules and I had the computer shops, and that was and we did really well out of them. And then a few things happened, which sort of I'll gloss over it a bit, but I sort of decided that I wanted to go back and do magic full time. We'd had enough. By the end of it, we'd have enough. We've been offered quite a few quid for them a few years before we decided to actually call it a day. But Jules sold them, and we got a few quid out of it. And then I sort of decided I wanted to go back. I wanted to go back and do magic. One of the things that convinced me I wanted to go back and do magic was that I'd had enough of computers. We'd worn ourselves out doing the shops for nearly 8 odd years. And looking at it now, the one thing we didn't have, which I know is a really sensible thing to have if you've got a business, is an exit strategy. We didn't have any exit strategy. We just sort of we were really good at setting up, really good at making it successful, but then we didn't really know what to do with it, and it just became arguments and strife, really. And if we had an exit strategy, what we should have done was sold it when it was worth £500,000 and gone, thanks very much, that's the end of it. But one of the things that convinced me I wanted to go back and do magic was I started seeing people on television like Stephen Mulhern and these people that I used to hang out with as a teenager. And I was like, hang on a sec, I beat Stephen in a competition when I was 14. I'm easily as good as that, So I sort of, I started seeing people I knew in the media and on television and I thought, shit, I can definitely do this for a living, and also it's something I really love and enjoy. And that never really went away. So that was around about sort of 29, 30, I think, Craig, I sort of went, I want to go back and do. I remember going to see my parents and saying, "Well, I've got a little bit of money back from the computer business, and it's going to be a struggle, but I want to do magic professionally." And it took me a few years, really. I went and worked for Marvin for a bit. I went and did the really shit contract out in Gran Canaria for a rubbish holiday park, and then I came back and worked for Marvin, and then I met Neil Henry, who's now like an internet superstar. He's got 2 million followers on TikTok, still a brilliant mate of mine, one of my favorite people in the world, and Neil and I owned the Magic Cave in Covent Garden. We had the magic shop there for many years. So that was,
I mean, your name was synonymous with the Magic Cave. I mean, that became the place where a lot of people kind of hung out, really, wasn't it? I mean, that was like the place. How did that come about? I mean, so you've come back from Brighton, you've sold the computer business. I'm guessing while you were doing the computer business, you were still performing part-time and you were still kind of doing your thing. You come back, you decide to make a full-time living, you start doing the gigs, you're getting more gigs. How does that translate to opening the Magic Cave?
You're asking some good questions here, actually, because I think this is for me. These are things that are interesting about what we did. So I went to Gran Canaria and I did this really shitty contract in like this rubbish hotel resort. Well, actually, you know what? It's not entirely fair to say that, because it wasn't the greatest gig in the world, but I learned some things on that. I learned to do balloon animals, and I learned that things like sponge balls can be cool and stuff. And I learned what to do when you've got a big group of kids or when you've got the same people again and again. So that was still a real learning experience, even if the money was rubbish. And I was in a bit of a rough place, but there was still some things to be learned from that. But I came back to England and I went to work for Marvin at Harrods. I was his resident magician at Harrods for Christmas, and I phoned up. It had just come to the end of the season in Gran Canaria, and I phoned up Marvin's Magic, and I said, "I'm coming back to the UK. I'm totally skinned. have you got any jobs going? And I spoke to a girl there, and she said, I'm really sorry, but we've done all the interviews, we've done we all the magicians are sort of set up for the for the next few months through Christmas and that sort of thing. I said, no worries. If you do speak to Marvin, can you tell him Lee Hathaway called from Gran Canaria and I'd like a job? And within about half an hour they phoned back and they went, oh, Marvin says you're the resident magician in Harrods for the next 3 months. So thanks, Marvin. So that was really great. So no, as you know, I mean, Marvin's Magic, not great money but a great experience. These are things I always recommend to any. I mean, you're asking actually about people, just to go back a bit, because you were saying about advice to new people in magic. If you want to do magic professionally, here's a great bit of advice. Don't try and go out and get the 500 quid and the £1,000 gigs and all that. Go and do some of those shit jobs, like, and they're not shit jobs, they're learning jobs, but go and do those jobs like working for Marvin. Go out and work for Rodney at the House of Illusion, get some residencies for 50, 100 quid, whatever, and do that as a training ground, because that really makes you good at magic. Is constantly meeting the public, constantly speaking to people, constantly doing, demonstrating and showing stuff and performing time and time again. Those are such good learning training grounds to get good at being a good magician.
I completely agree, Lee, on that. I mean, you see so many people that have done nothing but practice in their bedroom and showed a few mates, and then they somehow fluke the way into a £500 gig, and they're posting on Facebook going, I've got a gig next month. Do you know what tricks I should do? Well, if you're needing to know what tricks you should do at a gig, gig in the first place,
Absolutely, yeah, 100%, yeah. But those are, I mean, I look back on those times and it's like, do you know what? Yeah, it was. I mean, I say hard work. It's not hard work compared to many people that get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and go and do whatever, but it's hard work for a magician, but going, I used to get up every 7 o'clock in the morning, get on the tube, go to Harrods, swipe out 8 o'clock, and earning 50 quid a day. But it was great because you met the public, you got to perform every day, so I was the magician in Harrods anyway. And I also knew Marina, that owned the magic stall in Covent Garden, which he'd had for like 15, 20 years, who again, still a great friend of mine, wonderful lady. She's a South African lady, and she's a bit eccentric, and she had this sort of magic and joke stall in Covent Garden. Lovely person. I went to her 60th birthday a couple of years ago, and she doesn't look any, she's one of those people that's just defied age. She still looks the same as when I knew her as a kid. She's amazing. But so she was sort of coming to the end of the line in Covent Garden with her stall. She'd had it for 20 years. She wanted to go and train as a teacher in Brighton. She had a son. And I met Neil Henry in Harrods when we were working together with Marvin. And we sort of bantered off each other and just like had these really incredible sales figures and were like really enthusiastic about selling stuff. And I mean, Neil is one of the greatest salespeople you've ever met in your life. I mean, he's just extraordinary at selling. I don't want to take too much time off on the interview just telling you how good Neil is at selling, but I mean, he's like, I mean, I know Andy Nyman was considered to be a legend, and Neil is up there with that sort of level of just being a brilliant salesperson. He's amazing. And so me and Neil got on really well. I mean, we just hit it off like a house on fire. We're still great mates, and we were working in Harrods. We were both working in Harrods selling stuff for Marvin. And I said to Neil, I said, why don't we? I know where to buy this stuff. Dynamic coins, Svengali decks. I knew the suppliers and that. So why don't we start doing some markets at the weekend? And making a few quid. So Neil and I went to the car auction, bought a couple of like old dodgy cars. Like 300 quid each, and we drove up and down the country going and doing these open air markets on a Sunday, doing the same thing we were doing in the week at Harrods, and we started to make a few quid. And then Marina said in Covent Garden, she said, I want to sell my stall, I want to sell my business, and she wanted about 22 grand for it, something like that. And Neil and I didn't have the money, so we worked out this kind of plan that if we because we were making, when we were doing the open air markets on a good day, provided it was sunny, we could make like 400, 500, 600 quid a day sometimes, profit, not takings, profit, you know. So we worked out if we did the summer season from sort of the beginning of July through to 1st of September, and both of us drove around doing a different open air market every day, by the end of it we'd be able to make 20 grand, right? So that's what we did. And we bought the stall with that money. I mean, we nearly killed ourselves. We were driving around in these shitty cars up and down the country. We used to we were both sleeping in the cars. Neil was sort of like, you know, we were eating like pot noodles and crisps and shit, you know, and then driving to CityLink or UPS or whoever the courier was to get the next stock, because we couldn't afford to buy all the stock at the same time, you know. 7 in the morning, getting the stock, going and setting up the stalls. So for about 7 or 8 weeks, we drove around. Both of us drove around the country, and we raised 20 grand to buy Marina's stall, which was how we bought that stall in Covent Garden. Yeah. Which is a good question, because not many people know that. And I mean, it begs the question: why didn't you just do that all the time? You know, and you'd have a load of money. But we nearly killed ourselves, Craig, doing that. We nearly killed ourselves doing it. It was really, really battering. But yeah, so we went to Marina. I think we had about 15 grand, and she let us pay the extra 5 grand off, like over the course of the year. Yeah, but that's how we got the stall in Covent Garden, the Magic Cave, and started that, which we had for about 7 odd years.
Well, you know what? Before we talk about the Magic Cave, I want people to understand that are watching this that there's no such thing as an overnight success. And you look at somebody like Lee Hathaway and you go, oh my gosh, he goes out for this money, he does this gig, he's so successful. That doesn't come automatically. That you can't just snap your fingers and be you and be at the level you are now right now. You've worked sweat, blood, and tears. And done a load of crappy gigs and done a load of stuff that's paid next to nothing, slept in cars, done all of this stuff that has ultimately put you into a position where you are now. But you shouldn't skip the steps. You know, it's going to take time for people to get to the top of a profession.
Yeah, I do think like there's not much I can do about it, you know, and you just have to let it go at the end of the day. But it does disappoint me when, you know, if I'm, you know, if I'm at a gig with, you know, people that I know are really good, you know, and there's, you know, and I can, you know, I can name them. I'm not going to, but I can, you know, I know who's really worked to get there. You know, it's like if I'm charging, you know, 600, 700, 800 quid to do a close-up gig, I know that I'm worth that money, because I've done it inside out. I know that I can go and do that, you know, and the one unfortunate thing about magic in that sense is there's no official qualification. There's no who's good, who's bad. And like earlier when I talked about the fact the internet's given us some great things, one of the slightly less good things it's given us is some people are brilliant at website creation and at marketing, you know, and so those guys tend to, you know, if you're really good at SEO and really good at a website, you can have an amazing website overnight. When I started magic, and the same when I had my businesses, if you wanted to have a good business, you had to be in the yellow pages, you had to pay a lot of money to be an exchange and mark, you had to have a premises, you know, you had, you know, business cards. I can remember when, I mean, I'm ranting a bit now, but I mean, you know, I can remember when, if you wanted business cards printed, it was like a real special thing if anyone had a business card, because business cards weren't cheap. You know, it was like, you know, you had to have a plate made, you had to have the card printed. You know, you'd be talking about 1,000 quid to have business cards printed back in the early 90s. Whereas now, anyone can have a business card, you know, and it's not got the same kudos to it. So, you know, and the same with websites and that. So yeah, I do kind of, I try not to be bitter about it, and I don't think I am, but it does disappoint me when I see people charging, you know, X amount for a job, and I think, well, what have you done to justify that? You know, why do you think you're worth that money? You know, because there's people I know that would go and do that and smash it out of the park, you know, and yeah, I'm trying very hard not to mention names here. I don't want to do that, but you know, my mind's sort of flowing with people that I know are miles better than other people that, you know, go out for that cash, you know. And so, yeah, so going back to your point, Neil and I had the business in Covent Garden for 7 odd years, and that was a real good kind of bread and butter sort of foundation for us, because it was a, it's very much a sort of cottage. It wasn't one of those businesses you can expand on. The value in the business was us. You know, the reason it, you know, we were able to both pay ourselves, you know, 30-40 grand a year, which is all right money, you know, was because we went there and caned it and worked our ass off at the stall, you know. But you can't put demonstrators in and expect to get the same, you know, by the time you've paid them, and they're not going to work as hard as you, you know. Neil, you know, there were days when Neil went there at 9 o'clock in the morning, you know, and smashed it out of the park. Then he'd get the D lights out at 7 o'clock in the evening at Christmas. He'd be there till nearly 11 o'clock, you know, and boom, we'd have 2 grand in the bank, you know. So but you wouldn't do that if it wasn't your business, you know. And also, I don't have the same energy as Neil Henry. I mean, it's relentless, but still, I mean, that, yeah. So we made that work, and then again, like after sort of 7-8 years of having the Magic Cave, Neil started to get other jobs. He was doing stuff in the theatre. I'd just done the Fool Us thing with Penn and Teller, so I was starting to get better jobs and sort of, you know, up my sort of ranking in terms of, you know, the gigs I was getting and that sort of thing. And so we found very often that we couldn't be at the stall all the time. For the last sort of 2 or 3 years, there were often times when Neil was off doing a contract. He got some better jobs. I was going and doing gigs at Christmas time became like none of us, we weren't there because I was off doing gigs and stuff. And then I think around 2012, something like that, there was one Christmas where, I mean, Neil and I loved having the stall. I mean, we just absolutely loved it. It was just such a cool thing. We made it like a magic hub where magicians met up. We did a big party every year for all of our mates, you know, and I mean, we just adored having it. And even when it wasn't, you know, the last sort of year or two when it wasn't making money, Neil and I were like, well, let's just keep it, you know, even if it's ticking over, let's just have it because it's a brilliant thing to have. And then I think there was one Christmas where it came to January and both of us had to sort of like put, I think, 3 grand each of our gig money into the stall to keep it running. And that was the point where we went, right, it's time to sell it. You know, it's time to move on, because when you're putting money into it, it's crazy, you know. But we really wanted it to go to someone that was going to carry it on, and because we didn't want it to. Stalls in Covent Garden are quite sought after. I mean, you can sell a license on a stall in Covent Garden for a few quid, regardless of what you're selling, because there's only 8 stalls in the North Terrace. But we really wanted it to go to someone that was going to carry on making it a magic stall. So we sold it to a guy called Ashley, who runs it now, and it's still a magic stall, which is great, you know. And yeah, maybe we could have got a bit extra for it, maybe, you know, whatever, but I'm really pleased that it's still a magic stall. It was a magic stall when I was a kid, and Marina had it and we ran it, and you know, and because it's a really special thing to me, that stall, you know. And funnily enough, there was recently Ashley, I was wondering how Ashley had gotten through the COVID thing and that, you know, and I was talking to Neil and I said, you know, if push came to shove and anything happened to that, I think that's something I would try and say, I would go to save, you know, is that stall nowadays, because it's got an emotion. I really care a lot about that being there. It's a silly thing, but to me it's an important thing, because it was something I knew as a kid. Yeah,
totally. When you were running it, now I might be wrong here. This is my vivid memory, and I'm getting on in years. I seem to remember you released tricks through the Magic Cave. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Crystal meth and cannabis.
Yeah, cannabis effect, crystal method. We did a Linking Rings. We did a Linking Rings DVD with a lad called James that worked on our stall, which was very good. He was a big fan of Shooter Gower, but he had loads of his own original moves and stuff. So there's a good Linking Rings DVD that we did, and we did and Steve Deller's DVD.
What, Work and Play?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that was the Magic Cave. Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If you look at the back of Work and Play, yeah, that's for the Magic Cave. Yeah.
It's a great DVD. That's awesome.
So, yeah, and it's the first ever DVD that we flipped. We had flip screen on it, so if you were left-handed, you could flip the screen and watch it. Watch the moves in reverse. Yeah. If you watch Work and Play, I'm on it. I'm on the.
It's one of my favorite DVDs, but I haven't watched it in a few years.
I'm on the second half. I interview Steve on the second half of it. Yeah. So we released. I mean, that was a good DVD. That I was quite proud of that. So yeah, so we did those. The Cannabis Effect at one point was Murphy's. I think it was Murphy's third selling top trick in the world for a couple of weeks.
Cannabis Effect is legendary. Like somebody asked me a question. I was being interviewed on a podcast a while ago, and somebody says, "Oh, what's one of the best ACANs you've ever seen?" And I was like, "Or the best tricks I've ever seen." I was like, "Cannabis Effect," and they were like, "What's that?"
Oh, thanks,
I don't think anybody knows what it is now. I mean, would you ever bring that back out? Is that something that you'd ever?
Well, first of all, just in case anyone's watching this, I must credit Daniel Young, because Daniel Young was the person that really came up with the working and the method behind it. All I really did, because Dan and I were very good mates at the time, we used to hang out most nights. All I really did was, gave him a few tweaks on it and changed a few bits and gave him some presentation ideas. But I can't take credit for coming up with the sort of basic idea of how that effect works. That was definitely Dan that created that. But we put the DVD out together because by the time we did that, I was able to put the DVD out, and also I'd sort of been involved with him as a project for so long that it sort of become a sort of different effect to what he'd originally created. But it was definitely him that came up with the general idea for that in the first place. But yeah, I mean, I'd be tempted to put it out again. Yeah. I keep a few. Sorry, mate. I don't know why there's so many helicopters going overhead tonight, but
I can't hear it, so it's fine.
I keep a few. I've got probably about 100 odd copies up in my parents' loft. I keep about 10 on the boat, and what I do is I sell them at lectures. If I do a lecture, I dem it, and sometimes I sell half a dozen at a lecture. And I kind of keep it, I've got those to sort of sell. So I have got some if anyone wants one, but.
How can I reach out to you? And I'll put a link at the bottom.
Do you know what, Craig? I kind of like. I mean, it made a few quid, but actually, I mean, we did a white out of it for a one trick release. But do you know what? I mean, another thing that sort of I get a bit fed up with in magic, is when I see people batter an idea to death, or or just release rubbish that I just don't, that I just think, you've just put this out because there's a convention coming up, or you need another trick to make a few quid, and it's like I've never released magic on that basis. I've never producing tricks for me has never been a living. It's been something where I thought, this is a really shit hot idea, let's put this out, and so I kind of like the idea that it's a bit difficult to get hold of, really. I don't I'm quite happy about that. If someone really wants a copy, they can contact me. I've got them on the boat, they are available, but I don't know what would re-releasing it mean? Going to Alakazam or something, and doing a deal with Peter, or going to Dave Bonsall at Prop Dog. It's like, well, whatever. There's plenty of tricks out, So, and then we put the Crystal Method out, which was did you ever see that at all?
Yes, it's with I don't want to give it away, but it was with the green. If it's the one I'm thinking of, was it the one where kind of like a peak type impression style thing?
No, not at all. No, not at all. No. So that DVD had again, I think Murphy's has still got some. That DVD had effects on it from James Brown, Steve Della, Angelo Carbone, myself, Neil, and I'm probably going to miss a couple of people out there that I shouldn't that I shouldn't do, but it had this really great bank of ideas on it, and what it was a deck of completely clear plastic playing cards, like the Phantom deck.
Okay.
So when Josh J put out the Phantom deck, I was like, well, we've already done that. That's exactly what Crystal Method was a deck of completely clear individual playing cards, with all these different ideas of routines you could do with it. Yeah. So that was that did all right. I mean, it wasn't quite as successful as the Cannabis Effect, and I wasn't like devastated by it, but I wasn't entirely happy with the production quality of that. We got the we got the decks made in China, and one of the downsides of getting anything made in China was you never quite know what you're going to get, and they weren't quite as good quality as I'd have liked. So it was all right. As we sold quite a few through Murphy's, you know, and people got it, but I wasn't devastated that it didn't do better, and I also I wasn't again that devastated that Josh J put out the Phantom deck, which I think is a much better version of the same thing, you know. So we did that. And then we put out Steve's DVD as well. So we produced a few DVDs. The Magic Cave, we owned a DVD replication machine.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. Have you ever seen those?
Yeah,
yeah. So we had a replication machine, so we could do short ones, and then if we wanted to do longer ones, we pressed them, which is what we did with Steve's DVD. So Steve's DVD, I think I produced 3,000 copies of that. And then when I moved out of my flat 3 years ago, and I sold my flat and bought the boat, I still had a broom cupboard full of about 500 of Steve's DVDs. And I mean, they sold well. I mean, we did really well. Steve came them out of lectures, and I thought I was really proud of those. I mean, that was of all the things we did, I thought it was a really nicely produced pack, you know, and we spent money on getting it looking right, and I thought the content was good in it as well. Yeah, so I had no space on the boat, and I was trying to get rid of stuff and sort of you know, economize to start to go and live on a boat. So I phoned up Steve, and I think I sold them all to him for £1 each or something. But I'd rather Steve own them because he can make use of them. You know, he can go and do lectures, and it's a good DVD that he owns. You know, so I was quite happy for him to have them.
Well, obviously, we've talked about Magic Cave. We've talked about how that came to an end, and you and Neil went your separate ways. You mentioned Penn and Teller, and how your gigs got better after it. So I'm guessing, was that the reason for going on Penn and Teller? Like, because you went in on the first season, so it's not like going on Penn and Teller now, where everybody knows the format, everybody knows what's happening, everybody knows what's going to happen. It's a very well-known format. We're in our 8th season. You must have gone into that program not really fully knowing what the concept is. I mean, how am I going to fool these guys? So, and therefore, that might have been a risk a little bit. Like, you know, Penn and Teller had a reputation of, you know, like exposing magic and ripping into magicians and being the bad boys of magic. Obviously, we know now, 8 seasons on, they're very respectful of the people that come on there. But at the time, you didn't know that. Was that a risk? What was the reason for going on there, and did it pay off?
These are some really great questions, Craig, because you're asking things I genuinely really care about, actually, which is nice, because I've done some other interviews, and you know, you're really hitting the nail on things that I care about. I never had any desire whatsoever to be on TV or to it's just not something that interests me, being in front of a camera. I like performing for people, you know, at a gig. And I like being really good at those environments, you know, which I think and I hope I am, you know, in a group of people, I can entertain them, you know. And so television just doesn't interest me at all. Some people it does. Some people want to go after it. Great, okay. But what I've always loved and always had a mad passion for whatever reason, is fooling magicians. I love magician fooler tricks. I love being able to like meet up with a group of guys, you know, and just fool the pants off them with some tricks that they, you know, stuff they don't know, you know, and those magician foolers, and no, there's some stuff I know. Yeah, we've all got a few things, but I mean, I just love that, you know, that's really key to me. I just love it. It's just a passion, you know. It's something that puts fire in my belly, and you know, I hang out with Sean Farquhar in Las Vegas when we were out there, and we spent the whole night just fooling. Like, we both had that sort of same buzz, and we just spent the whole night fooling the hell out of each other, and it was such a good night, because, like, you know, 5 minutes later he'd come back and go, right, I've got one. I'm like, right, okay, watch this. You know, it was just such a great night we had out there, and it just and so I've always loved that. That's always been really. I've loved coming up with something that I don't think magicians would know, and I think probably 10, 12 years before Fool Us came along, Penn and Teller, I had this crazy idea, and it was based on a Marlowe effect, where it's in the card edition where you dribble some cards, and they look at a card, and then they hold the deck. You don't hold the deck. They hold the deck. They dribble the cards. They look at the card. They dribble them back, and then they shuffle the cards. And you know and then you find the card. And it's done. Can I expose methods on here? Who's watching this?
Yeah, nobody watches this but magicians, so you won't have a problem.
Okay, so and it's a great trick. Blaine did it, but it's done with a bit of spit on the top of the card. That's the right, as they look at the card. But effectively, the point is you never touch the deck. That's their perception of it is you never touch a deck. And I always loved that trick, and it still fools magicians these days. And so I wanted to come up with a way of doing that without actually genuinely touching the deck. So I came up with this ridiculously crazy method that would work, where anyone could open a deck of cards, cut the deck, look at a card, shuffle them, and I'd know what the card was without ever touching the deck, right? Which is impossible. And I came up with it sort of 10 or 12 years before, just as a concept, but I never did it because it was only it was going to cost a few quid to do. It was ridiculous to make, but in my mind, I knew it would work. So I never thought any more about it. It was like one of those things that, well, maybe in the future, I'll do it for competition, or, it was like, in theory, this could work. And so when they came along with this television, when I heard about Penn and Teller Fool Us, and I knew the guys working on it. Angelo Carbone was one of the members of the Demon Club, and he was like the magic advisor for Fool Us. So I knew Angelo really well because we'd grown up together. We used to go and hang out in hotels in London and do magic together, and so I knew the team working on it. And I thought, God, I've got this effect that they just won't have a clue about, because it's just so off the wall, and it's such a ridiculous method, and as and I think anyone worth their salt knows watching this, it's who's been a magician for years. For me, going to Las Vegas, being on telly, all of that stuff, it's like I can go to Vegas, I can get on telly, that's not. But the real thing that was like for me was the best feeling in the world, right, was I can go and full teller. Like to full teller is just above and beyond any other feeling in the world. But for me, that was the Penn, by all means, legendary performer, but he's not the brains there. It's like to full teller is like, then for me it's like, then you really shit hot at magic, because he knows everything, and I genuinely had this idea that I thought would fool him. So so I found out the production company, and I made it, and I made this really crude version with my limited technical skills, and I went along and I showed it to Angelo, and I showed it to Johnny Thompson, who's sadly passed now, but JT was again a magic legend, and Johnny just loved it. I mean, he just was so all over it. He was like, "Oh my God, this is gonna absolutely fuck them. This is amazing." He just got it straight away, and I was showing him it with this like crude version that I made, but he just saw straight away what this could be, and so he was really excited about it, and so that was so doing the show, I mean, by all means, that without a doubt elevated my career in terms of getting better gigs, and and even nowadays, I mean, even now, it's 10 years on, but even now, if someone goes on my website, it's like instant kudos, yeah, regardless. If you've got an agent and they're looking at 4 or 5 magicians, they go back, oh, full Penn and Teller, yeah, you've got the job. Do you know what I mean? It's like, that's all they need to know. You could be shit at everything else, but the fact you've got that is like, so I never had any jobs directly from it in terms of, someone's gone, oh my God, you full Penn and Teller, let's give you a job. But the amount of jobs I've got off the back of, it's just instant status, isn't it? It's like straight away, boom, oh, they're obviously all right, but that's not why I did it, mate, and at all. Honestly, I can say hands down the reason I did it was to go on was because I really wanted a full teller, and I wanted that, and that was the best moment for me of all of it. Was it was kind of, it was kind of like all the years of doing magic. It was like that moment was like qualification of, yeah, you are, you know, you're really good at this because you've come up with something that even he doesn't know, you know.
I mean, if you're into fooling magicians, you can't get much better than fooling Teller. I mean, that's just incredible. Really.
Yeah, I mean, that was, you know, yeah, and the only person that's ever worked that, I mean, and I've spoken to loads of magicians, you know, and there's the only person I know that genuinely worked that trick out without knowing how it was done, and I knew they didn't know how it was done. We had to, you know, but genuinely sort of thought about it and went, okay, this is my idea. It was Jeff McBride when I met him, when I was chatting to him in Vegas, you know, and Jeff went, well, maybe it's done like this, and I thought, do you know what? If it's only Jeff there, I'll take that. I'll take that. But yeah, it was that just that feeling of, yeah, coming up with something that I knew was so off the wall, and it's not in a book, it's not published, you know. It was that was the reason I did that show, really.
Did Teller come up to you afterwards and ask how it was done?
Yeah, they both did. Yeah, so they came up afterwards, and there was a guy called Mark Magana who I should credit as well. Mark's a brilliant circus performer. He's not that well known in magic, but he is known by some of Copperfield's illusion builders and stuff, and he's worked on things like Starlight Express, and he does like pyrotechnics and a lot of circus stuff and that, and he's a wonderful guy, and I knew him from Covent Garden, and he helped me build the sort of final version of it, and he came out to Vegas with me actually because he worked so closely with me on it, and they came up to Mark afterwards, and they said, well, so go on, how's it done? And Mark told them, and this is where I swear a bit, and Penn was with Teller there, and he just looked at Mark and he went, fuck off, you are kidding me. Like, that's ridiculous. And I mean, they were just like, yeah, when Mark told them, it was like they just didn't believe it. Yeah. And they wanted to have a look at the they really wanted to have a look at the equipment we'd used to make it happen, and I remember Mark, to this day, Mark refused to let them look at it. So they've still never seen it.
Wow.
So perhaps they think we cheated, but we didn't. That was genuinely how we did it. I think you might know, but I'm not gonna reveal it on you on here. But yeah, it was that was a great moment. You know, it was a really great feeling of like literally. And there's another good moment in that. If you watch the, I mean, the version that's online is edited, but there's Teller's got an earpiece on him, and Johnny Thompson and the guys are sort of relaying information through to him, you know, and there's a great moment in that when I know that they say to him, no, it's not, you know, it's not a deck switch, no, there's not a deck switch, and you see if you watch a video, you see his face go, what the fuck? Like literally, he's like, what? And that's a really nice moment actually, because all you see if you watch the video like through is just his facial expression sort of go, shit, I've been screwed here, you know, and that's really nice. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, obviously, off the back of that, like you said, your gigs got better, you got better paying gigs, and obviously that has continued from that point, whenever it was, 2012, 2014, all the way through to now. You've been performing at a very high level.
Well, all the way through to about a year ago, mate.
All the way through March 2020, you've been performing at a very high level. And then the entire
have you not? Where have you been for the last year? Have you not? I'll come and live where you are, mate.
Well, here's a question for you. And before I want to talk about a couple of other things before we wrap this up. But before I do, you mentioned earlier on, and I completely agree with you 100%. And you know, there's people out there that are going out and making 50 quid a gig, and they're applying for the £500 gigs. Obviously, you're now at a level where that's where you are. But once upon a time, you were a 50 quid gig magician. You were out going the cheaper gigs. For somebody that's listening to this and that is taking your advice on board, is there one piece of advice that you could give them for how they can get from being here to being at a position where they apply for a gig on a Magic Gig Share forum and Lee Hathaway doesn't go, that guy doesn't deserve to be applying for that gig? You know, what can they do to get themselves into a position where they can go out?
One of the things that I think I referred to, and this is not my advice actually. This comes from Paul Daniels has said this. I think I've seen you say similar things to this. I think I've seen Wayne Fox say similar things to this. And it's an adage which goes back way before that other magicians talk about. Is if you are doing magic for business, then it's business first, magic second, and you should really be good at running a business. And what that means, and what I see a lot of magicians fail at is, okay, first of all, you've got to be a really good magician, right? You have to be really shit hot at going out and performing. But I've seen so many people who are good at that actually, right? But don't answer their phone in the morning. Don't keep good records. Don't send a contract. Don't act professionally. So I think that you need to learn about the whole aspect of running. If you are doing magic for business and charging that kind of money, you should understand what that encapsulates, not just the magic aspect of it. But at the same by the same token, you know, I think your question is, how do you get there? I suppose. Well, I think if you're good enough and you put yourself out there, you will eventually get given those opportunities. You know, they'll come along, but you know, and it might take a while. You know, it's hard. You know, go out and work the restaurants and meet people. You know, give out your card, make contacts. But I think, you know, that one of the reasons that I've sort of sustained making a living from this for so long, and I think all the good people that I know have sustained making a living from so long, is because they're not constantly looking for new business. You know, I think if you go to a gig and you haven't given out your number or given out your details to at least a few people, and you haven't got 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 jobs from that, then you're not good enough to do this for a living. And that may sound really harsh, and you know, people might find that, you know, a bit over the top, but mate, if you're constantly looking for new work, you know, get a different job, because you shouldn't be. You know, you should be going to a wedding and everyone going, oh my god, that guy was amazing, I really want them at my wedding. Oh my god, that girl was incredible, you know, when can we get her at the next party, etc., etc. You know, if you've not got that level of, if what you're getting is, you know, a nice email from someone going, oh June, you know, June's emailed, oh, we thought you were great, but no one else has booked you from that wedding, or they're not talking about you. Don't, you know, get a different job. You need to be that good. And then you'll get the gig. Then you'll get those gigs. You know, then you'll get those jobs. Because if you're competing on price all the time, you know, and so many people do this, you're competing on price. So you're going, you know, I'm going to go in at 350 because someone else has gone in at 400. What you need is people that want you. You know, not people that just want a perform. You know, it's like, if people need to want you, then you could start going, this is, you know, I'm 650 for a wedding, I'm 850 for a corporate, etc. You know, and all the advertising in the world is not as good as personal recommendation. You know this, mate. You know, it's personal recommendation and people talking about you as an individual. You know, and so to answer in answer to your question, you know, how do you elevate yourself from sort of 50 quid to 500 quid? You know, I remember talking to a friend of mine who was who's undoubtedly one of the greatest experts on web design and the internet going. I'm talking to the level where he now builds stuff for the Home Office and for Secret Service and that, you know, on thousands of pounds a day. I mean, his level of understanding is way above and beyond anyone, you know, that regularly works on the net. And I remember saying to him once, how do you get to the top of Google? You know, and he said, how do you get to the top of Google? Be the best at what you do. You know, that's how you get onto the top of Google, is be the best and the most specific about what you do. And so I think that's a good answer to how do you get to do those gigs. You know, either you blag it and you go on Facebook and you go and, you know, apply for a gig and you're lucky enough to get it, and you go and disappoint someone and they never book a magician again because they've paid 500 quid for you to wank around with some card tricks, you know, or you do it the proper way and you just become really, really good at it, and eventually you'll get those jobs, and organically you'll start getting recommendations and you'll get booked for more of them.
Absolutely brilliant advice, and I totally agree 100%. Bottom line, if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. It's not easy. It's not for everyone.
You can. I know you can get those jobs. You know, I know people that have gone. You know, and I've seen them on. I mean, you know, without. And I know magicians that have gone along and done jobs for £500, £600, £700 who shouldn't really be there earning that money, in my opinion. You know, but they won't. You won't get booked again for that.
Yeah.
You know,
100%.
and people will go. They might actually think, "All right, you're all right," but they don't know. You know, there's a great book which is called Customer Satisfaction. Was it? Customer Satisfaction is Worthless. Customer Loyalty is Priceless. Brilliant book. Okay, and people just happy with what you did, right? Isn't gonna make you, you know, be able to continue that as a job or as a business, right? People just going, you know, all right, you know, you came and fixed my taps. You came and, you know, I went to a restaurant. How many restaurants do you go to, right? Where you don't complain, you have a nice meal, you know, you sit, well, you know, you sit down and you go, yeah, the food was all right, but you don't. But you're not out the next day going, oh my God, you have to go to this restaurant. Oh my God, it was amazing, right? There's only a few like that. Do you know what I mean? And they're the ones that's the level that you want to try and be at, right? Is, you know, is like, you know, if you go abroad, you know, on holiday, right, you might visit 20, 30 restaurants. How many do you talk about? One or two? You know, because they had those extra bits and they were special and they were really good at what they did, you know. And so just being decent enough to not get complaints isn't good enough, you know. I don't think, you know, I think that if you want to be really good at something, you need that. That's what I want to be, that good at it that people are going, gee, wow, that guy was amazing, you know, that we really had a good time at that event, you know. And so I aspire to sort of that's why I like doing close-up magic, and I don't want to do TV or do anything else because I think I'm really good at it, you know. And that might sound a bit arrogant, Craig, but I genuinely think I'm that job I'm really, really good at, you know. And so that's why I'm happy doing it.
You're absolutely amazing. Well, and your reputation precedes you. Let me ask you, it really does. So let me ask you one more question. I wasn't going to ask you this question, but what you've just said makes me think. Earlier on, you talked about, you know, you're the sort of person that can go into like a military base or where everybody's pissed up in a corporate event and you can hold your own. And we all know magicians that can't. But likewise, you could go to, you know, a really nice, swanky party where everyone's polite and you would fit in as well. Do people that are trying to make a living out of this, do they need to kind of have a niche that they fit into, or do you have to try and be more of a broad jack of all trades? And I'm not talking about stage versus close-up. I'm talking more about the different types of close-up. Like, can you be a guy that does the restaurant residency whilst at the same time doing the high-end corporate, or do you have to focus on one area?
I think I mean there are certainly performers who've got their niche and appear to make a living out of it. I mean, you know, for instance, if you think of someone like Drummer Money Coots, you know, Drummer Money Coots was set up a table apparently he sets up a table in a thing and people come and see him, you know, and that's great. I mean, if he's making a living out of it, I mean, I question whether Drummer Money Coots really needs that much cash anyway. I don't think it, you know, but I think he's probably, you know, come from a wealthy background. But anyway, I mean, no, I mean, you know, he's a good guy, and if you can do that, great. You know, my experience of doing close-up magic and the different types of environments you have to go into is not that at all, you know. Yeah, it'd be lovely, you know, to be who's the guy? There's a guy in the States, isn't there, the millionaire magician Steve Cohen, I think, that, you know, has his big theater set up in New York, you know, and great, you know, that's fine, but that's not me. I mean, no, as a working close-up magician, you know, going out and doing gigs at Christmas, going out and doing private parties, etc., you come across all manner of environments, from, you know, Julie's 40th birthday party, you know, at the CIU club at Whitstable in Kent, you know, where everyone's pissed off and there's a fight in the corner, to the next night you're at the Dorchester, you know, and they're serving you champagne in a private room, and, you know, and so, you know, and there's VIPs and, you know, billionaires all around. I mean, it's just, you know, that's my experience of doing close-up magic. And so I think I don't know if jack of all trades is the right word, because you're doing a specific trade, but I think that you hit on something there where I think that you have to be adaptable to the different environments that you're working in, and you have to, and I've been fortunate enough that, I grew up in a very working class family. My dad was a postman, grew up on a council estate, we did well, and I still think I'm a bit, I'm certainly more working class and more, the sort of, your Barrow boy than I am, come from a, sort of private pub, privately educated, sort of, aristocratic background. But I tend to be able to work in all those environments. And I think that, and again, this goes back to being yourself a bit, is you do have to adjust your personality slightly, in terms of whether or not, some of the gags you do, some of the, some of your language, and how you pronounce yourself. But again, part of it is down to being yourself again. I mean, when I think of one of my favorite close-up performers, he doesn't really do much close-up now, but also one of my best mates in magic, Paul Martin. And if you've ever seen Paul Martin work for an audience, I mean, I think Paul's one of the greatest close-up magicians for a live audience that exists in this country, and there's ever been. He's just brilliant, because everyone loves him and he gets the crowd going. And Paul is able to be as good with a bunch of East End Barrow Boy gangsters as he is with the royal family which he's performed for and that sort of thing. He adjusts himself like that, but he comes across as a bit cocky and a bit cheeky and a bit of a lad, but he's able to. But that's fine, because people like that, even posh people like that, or whatever it is. It's just that providing you're respectful and you're nice about it, so you know where to tone it. He's got that down. I remember it's funny, just as a sort of final thing to say to this, in terms of adjusting your levels. I remember I did a gig with Paul it was in Holland Park, it was a private birthday party, and I mean, to give you an idea of the sort of people that were there, like Benedict Cumberbatch was one of the best mates of this person, and there was these Hollywood A-list stars there, and me and Paul did close up on this gig, and there was an old chap there, and we'd done a bit of magic and stuff, and we were messing about at the end of it, and this fella turned around to us, and he said to me and Paul, and I thought, God, this was probably the best time we've ever been called out at a gig perfectly. He went, "You two have done rather well for a pair of old chancers, haven't you?"
That's hilarious.
We were like, "Oh, we've been busted." but yeah, I mean, I know it's, as I say, I know it's cliched and going back to what we were saying earlier, but being yourself is kind of, that doesn't necessarily mean, what I think people think it means. It just means the moment you try and pretend to be somebody else, if I go into an environment and try and pretend to be really well-to-do or really posh, it's not going to work, because I'm not that person. I can tone down, the effing and blinding and and be more respectful, but I'm not going to be, I'm not Guy Hollingworth. That I'm never, that's never going to be me. If I tried to be that, I would look ridiculous. So you have to kind of be. I think you have to be genuine and true to yourself in a sense. Yeah,
absolutely. I'm going to ask you a question about the Magic Circle quickly, because at the very beginning of this interview, you said that one of your goals was to join the Magic Circle, and it was kind of that mythical society. Obviously, you've been involved with the Magic Circle for a very, very long time, and you've been on the council, and you've been at the very, very top, as far as I'm aware, and you're a big advocate of the Magic Circle. I know you spend a lot of time talking to the YMC as well, and you're very passionate about sort of bringing up the youth in magic, which is amazing. Would you ever want to, do you have any goals in the Magic Circle? Would you ever want to be like the president or something like that? Or, someone that's so passionate about the circle, do you have any goals within that society that you'd like to hit?
When I stood for the council, one of the, that was back in I think 2012, and uh, I had a number of goals back then that I wanted to achieve when I stood for the council. One was I thought the circle was really old hat in terms of its tech stuff, and it hadn't embraced technology enough, and it didn't realise that how much real estate was in digital, in terms of social media and in terms of having a good website and that sort of thing. So I really wanted it to realise that and actually start, rather than relying on volunteers and people to knock up a shitty website, was to actually spend money on it and value it as much as they value the building or something. So that was one thing. The other thing I didn't like was I didn't like the way that there were certain things that I didn't like, the way you turned up to the circle and you got intimidated on the door and that sort of thing. So I wanted to introduce a better door system. I thought it was unwelcoming to a degree, and those things still exist. But I think that I helped change a lot of the things I wanted to achieve over the 7 years that I was on council. I think I did, oh, and there's one more thing actually. By the way, I didn't achieve those by myself. It was because I had other people around me, and and some really great people that sort of worked incredibly hard as well. But one thing I really wanted to do was, back in the when I was a member of the circle, first of all in the mid-90s, there was a real controversy where they some of the old guard, if you like, the members threw out John Lenihan for apparently exposing the free card trick on television. And after that, you've got this sort of influx of people that left the Magic Circle who were all really good members, like Anthony Owen and Stephen Mulhern and people like that. And I just thought it was one of the saddest things that I ever witnessed, because those people used to have Andy Nyman and people like that, and used to create such a great buzz and atmosphere at the Magic Circle in the 90s. It was such a wonderful thing, and there was this the fact that happened was a catalyst for such negativity afterwards. And so one of my big things, because although it's seems like one thing, I don't think it is. I think it's it's sending a message out to people, and it kind of and it's flipping a switch that then which it turned out happened. Was one of my things. I wanted the circle to reinstate John Lenihan. I didn't want them to get him to reapply. I wanted them to reinstate John Lenihan and accept that they've made a mistake doing so. And Faye Presto was very supportive in that, actually, whilst I was on council. And eventually they did it. And of course, what happened, as I expected, as soon as they did that, many people that hadn't been a member for years, like Anthony Owen and Mulhern, rejoined. So that was a big thing for me, was to make that happen for so many reasons. I thought it was a blot on the circle's landscape, and I just thought it would show that they've moved on a bit. I mean, it's saddening to see what's gone on in there in the last year. You've had your ups and downs with the Magic Circle and ins and outs and all sorts. Yeah, I mean, it's really exhausting, mate. I mean, it's just exhausting. I spent 7 years on council, and I hope I achieved some things, and I hope that I made some things better. But ultimately, it's a lot of it's thankless, and it's bloody hard work. And and when I look at the amount of work that I did for the Magic Circle, and someone like Mike Sullivan will tell you this now, who's the membership secretary, the amount of work that I did for the circle was probably equivalent to, if not surpassed by the amount of work that I did when I had the computer shops and when I had the Magic Cave. I mean, I did so much stuff for the circle, that no one really knows about or cares about, and it's like, and you look at it and go, gee, why wasn't I doing something for myself, rather than, I mean, I'm glad I did it, don't get me wrong, I'm glad I did it, and I'm really pleased that I've made that contribution to Magic. I think the circle is important, and as for all its ups and downs and its, the negativity that exists around it, I think it's a great thing to have. Nowhere else in the world has a thing like the Magic Circle, really, that the public are synonymous with, and the public know. And I know that might have faded a bit nowadays, but when I was a kid, that was important, and I think that's kind of worth hanging on to, and looking after, even for all its faults. What do you think about it? Sorry.
You're completely right. I mean, I see how much work David Penn is a perfect example. He's on the council now, and I've spoken to him a few times. I've seen how much work he puts into this, and I think a lot of people that moan about what's happening within the internal politics of the Magic Circle, they forget that these people are doing it voluntarily, and they're putting their time and effort into for free because they want to build a better society for all of the members. And I think that you need to cut people a bit of slack because they work very hard at the job that they do, and then they get paid anything for it. It'd be so much easier for somebody like David Penn or Bob Pound or whoever to go, you know what, forget it. I'm just going to go and watch Netflix. Screw it. You know, so, but they don't, which shows their character, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, the circle has lost people like that, and it's lost some good people. You know, where you've had people like, you know, lawyers and accountants and stuff that, you know, that have been on council who've just had enough and just gone, you know, I'm not getting paid for this. I don't need this. You know, but so it suffers with that a bit. But I mean, one of the insights, I suppose, for, you know, we're both involved with them, you know, in one way or another in the Magic Circle, and we're aware of that. But if you speak to people who, you know, any members organisations that are run by councils, they all suffer with the same type of thing. You know, it's just the nature of the beast, I guess, in a way. You know, I mean, you know, kudos to David for, you know, David's a brilliant mind, you know, got some great ideas, you know, and kudos for him, or, you know, anyone that puts himself up for council, even people that, you know, I remember saying this to someone a long time ago, you know, even the people that I had sort of, you know, almost stand-up rows with and vehemently disagreed with, that when I was on the council, you know, I have more respect for them than I do for someone that sits on the fence on the outside and moans about it. You know, I have more, you know, anyone that's put themselves up for it, I have more, you know, regardless of, even if I totally disagree with them, you know, the fact they've bothered to actually do it, you know, and walk the walk rather than talk the talk, I think is, you know, is far more important. You know, the people that get my nose really are the people that sit on the side and just moan and don't, you know, it's like, okay, mate, if you think that, you know, go and do something about it.
And I think that's the point. I think that when you get involved in the council, it's a thankless job. If everything goes right and the entire place is running smoothly, you don't get people going, "Oh, thank you, you're doing an amazing job." It's to be expected. But the second something goes even slightly wrong, it's pitchforks and burning the village down time.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, Craig. I mean, that's the same with it. I mean, that's the same with any operation, though, isn't it? I mean, it's not just the circle; it's the same with any operation. It's like, you know, the people that are doing the best jobs are the people you don't notice. You know, it's like when you go in, you know, if you go into a restaurant and everything's running fine, you know, then, you know, and you don't notice that someone's, you know, massively on the ball with, you know, the table organisation or whatever it happens to be, you know. But yeah, the best jobs you don't notice. I mean, really, that's a testament to them, is that you don't realize that someone's gone to massive effort to get that to work. Yeah. You know, without a doubt, yeah, people are much better at complaining than they are at complimenting stuff. Yeah,
for sure. So yeah, would you ever go back on council again to quickly wrap this circle thing up, or would you ever? Or were you just happy being
as
a member?
It stands, now? I mean, I've been asked to go back on council a couple of times. So I've been asked to go back on council by a few people recently. As it stands, I'd rather see what new faces are around and see what they come up with. I think I'd need a real motivator to want to go back and council, like something like, when I stood originally, there was specific things that I wanted to change or I wanted to do, and I don't feel like I've got that right now. You know, if I had to focus in on something, I'd really, you know, right now in mind, I'd really like to improve the YMC and the youth initiative, the Magic Circle, and see it become, you know, produce some, you know, really good quality, world-class stuff, you know, that's in the league with, you know, that's, you know, we should have the ability, you know, as a leading country in the world in Magic, you know, with someone like the Magic Circle, to produce much better, you know, a real good quality of youth acts, you know, that are comparable to the Koreans and the, you know, some of the stuff that's coming out of the world. And I don't think that, you know, you don't, for a country that's got, you know, that's so synonymous with Magic, we're not producing, I don't think, enough world-class acts. So I'd like to, so I think the youth initiative for the circle could certainly be improved. I know Marvin's very passionate about that as well, although unfortunately I don't, he's not involved with the council anymore, but perhaps Marvin would get involved with that. I don't know if I'm the right person to do it, Craig. I don't know if I'm the, as much as I feel that it's important, I don't think that I'm necessarily either the face of that, or I've got the chutzpah to really want to be involved with that on a deep enough level. But that would be something that I might pick up on. If there was something I wanted to change about the circle.
I'd like to see that happen. My son is 8.
Sorry, buddy. Say that again. Say that once more.
I'd like to see that happen. My son is 8, and he is literally counting the days until his 10th birthday when he can apply for the YMC. Yeah. So I'd love. But
I think they can make it better. I do. I mean, and that's not. No disrespect to anyone that's running the YMC at the moment. I know what a hard job it is, but I think that that there's a real opportunity for the Magic Circle to take, and instead of just having a kids club where here's a few tricks and here's a magazine, there's within that sort of membership of however many it is for everyone, there'll be half a dozen kids who could be the next Lance Burton or the next blah blah blah, and it's like the next Jonathan Pendragon or whatever, or Juliana Chen or whatever it is. There'll be those kids, and they're not being, and there's nothing there for them at the moment. Other than, do you know what I mean? There's and I think the circle should take that by the horns and do something with it. As I say, I know Marvin's got some thoughts on that as well. He's very passionate about youth magic and that. I think that's something the circle could improve on. If I came back, maybe that's an area that I think that they can make better. But in terms of just the general arguments and the rubbish that's going on at the moment, I mean,
yeah,
it's just it's just saddening, really. We're supposed to be a magic club.
Absolutely. Now that brings us full circle, and I'm about to wrap this interview up in a bit. But before I do, I have to bring everything. Obviously, March 2020, COVID hit. We've all been affected. You've been affected. We talked off camera before we started. We're now
sorry, mate, did you say I've been infected or affected?
No, you've been affected with your career has been affected. You've not personally been infected. Your career has been affected, as has everybody's career. Obviously, we talked off camera, and gigs are starting to come back in slowly, which is nice. Obviously, it's still cautious times. But one thing that you've done, and I've been so inspired by watching you do that, is you haven't sat on your ass doing nothing. I've seen so many magicians that have just sat there and gone, oh, well, I'll put my feet up, I'll accept my free money, and I'll just wait for the world to open up again. You obviously, we know you live on a boat. You've been doing magic cruises. You've got something that you're planning for magicians in the future, which I'd like to talk about. And I've got a friend called Brad Burton, and he's a business expert, and he says, whenever you're in a situation, ask yourself, what does this make possible? And you've looked at the whole COVID situation over the last 15, 16 months, and you've said, what does this make possible? And you've basically created an entirely new income that you wouldn't have had before. And that's really inspirational, Lee. So before we wrap this whole interview up, can we just talk about what you've done with the boat, what you've got planned in the future with it?
Yeah, so I sort of thought to myself, well, it's going to. First of all, I tried doing the Zoom show thing because that was something that sort of everyone went into, and I just went. It just doesn't. It doesn't give me a buzz or any enjoyment, and any kind of anything I've done, regarding whether it was running a business or something, whether it's something to make money, it's like I have to have that interest in it. Otherwise, I just completely lose interest, and I don't really put my heart and soul into it at all. So Zoom shows just weren't it for me at all. I just didn't enjoy them. But I thought, well, I've got this beautiful boat that I live on. It's a big wide beam canal boat, and it's wonderful for day trips and stuff. So I started inviting people and clients in sort of groups of up to 6, which was what was allowed with the distancing and stuff. And we'd go for like a day out on the boat. Take it for an hour down the canal, stop at a nice pub, I do like a 40-minute magic show, bring it back. I'd do a couple of extra tricks, and that was it. And they just went brilliantly. And I mean, I absolutely love them. I enjoy them more than doing gigs or anything. It's just one of my, I love having people on the boat, love having a day out. One of the best things is to perform for a group of half a dozen attentive people rather than, different groups in a bar and drunk, and you can actually do all your stuff, and and you can talk about magic, and I've got all my stuff on the boat, and I can create the environment I want to create, and I can create the performing space I want to create. So I've absolutely loved them. And so I started marketing them and sort of pushing them a bit more, put them out to more clients. As I say, I have one this weekend, which was sadly cancelled, but I've got bookings for those, through June, through July. And I'm hoping I can carry on doing them because my God, it's just brilliant. Half a dozen people turn up. We go out for a day on the boat. We have a few drinks. I do like some magic, 40 minutes, 45 minutes, come back, do a few more things. And what I really like about them as well is that when I said to you earlier about when I said to you earlier about going and doing a gig and the difference between satisfaction and someone being really impressed, is that the feedback I've had from those has been brilliant. And I've had the first guy that came on the boat trip, the first ever one I did, he's now recommended that to 4 other people who've also booked trips, and another one I did in March, he's now recommended to his sister who's just booked a trip, and that's when I think you go, right, I'm onto something here. This is these are that good because people are going away and talking about them and saying, oh my God, you've got to go on this boat trip for the day, that's a model I like, is when other people are chatting about them, and you're getting rebooked from that. So I know that people are enjoying them that much as well. So that's good. So I'm going to do hopefully a few for magicians through sort of late July and August. We'll see how they go. They might work, they might not. I don't know. But I've got a few really top magicians, top names lined up. I really wanted to get Faye on board because I think Faye, Faye's someone who should really listen to if you want to know anything about close up or table hopping. You will not get better information than you'll get from Faye. She's amazing at it. I've got James Brown coming down, who I think is a great guy, really knows his stuff. Mark Oberon and Nick Einhorn is going to do one, and then hopefully I might be giving you a call or some other guys a call at some point, because hopefully if they work well, then we'll get some other people along as well, and do a few more of them. So that's happening again. Same sort of format, half a dozen people. I want it to be more of a day out and a workshop, and you'll get to spend some time with one of the really top name magician and hopefully learn some stuff and do a bit of a workshop and but the best advice, the best stuff comes with the sort of the in-between bits, the casual chats and the opportunity to just get to hang out with someone like that, so
I mean,
and
I remember
sorry,
go on, Lee, sorry.
No, I was just saying, it's also the thing with the boat trips that I've done, and I hope the same thing with those, is that this is just the greatest environment where everyone just feels so relaxed and so cool, and it's just really, really lovely to, grab a drink and go down the canal, and it's like you couldn't wish to be in a nicer place. So that kind of adds to the environment of the experience, if you like. It's just a nice day out for everybody.
I'll tell you something. I think that anybody watching this should jump on those, because I remember back in the day when Paul was still alive, Paul Daniels, paying to go and spend the day with him at his house. And he was organizing these kind of very small sessions for 6 or 7 people, and you pay and you go and spend the day, and he'll sit down with you and answer all of your questions. And I got more out of a day like that than I did out of 1,000 lectures, because it was very intimate and he got to answer my very specific questions that I had. And that made a massive influence on my career. To have the opportunity to sit down with somebody like Nick Einhorn, who is, let's be honest, one of the greatest of all time, and to actually be able to pick his brain in a really intimate environment where he's going to open up, and that's just worth its weight in gold, Lee. It really is.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Mate. And I'm not saying that because I'm trying to push them or sell them, because I'm over that nowadays. It's like they work, but I couldn't agree more. If I was if I was learning magic, and I'm saying this 100% genuine, if I was learning magic and I had an opportunity to spend a day on a boat with someone like Nick for 100 quid, I'd be like, put me down every single time, because that
when you announced the date,
you'll get more information out of doing that than you will from 100. No, from all the rubbish you can spend 100 quid on DVDs or or one tricks or that. You'd be amazed. Just like you say, that's why I used to go and hang out at magic conventions. I used to go and hang out. I went to South Shields Magic Convention, not for the convention, not for the lectures, not for the dealers, for the 10 minutes that I got to spend in the bar with Juan Tamariz. That was the thing I went for. To pick his brain for 10 minutes. I went to Blackpool. And what was the thing I remember from that was the 15 the 15 minutes I sat down with Williamson in the bar or something. So I think yeah, so that's why I've kind of created them, because I think I think they're great value, and I think that someone learning magic could come and could really get spending a day, like you say, on a boat with someone like Nick or James Brown or Faye or whatever is a really good opportunity. Yeah.
Screw anyone else that's watching this. When you announce the dates, I'm going to be there in a heartbeat. Just definitely. Oh my God, that's incredible. Lee, this has been an awesome interview. This has been brilliant. So I want to ask, by the way, actually, where can people go to get information about these? I want to put it on the screen right now. So if people like the idea of spending the day on the boat with you and Nick, where is there a place where they can communicate with you that it's going to be available?
Okay, mate, I'm just in the process of finalizing some dates with people, and then I was going to set up a URL on my site that people can go to get information. So if it's okay with you, I'll give you a link afterwards, and you can add it in. If that's cool.
Here. So
you'll put that down there. Yeah. Cool.
It'll be shown right now. So just click on the link in the description. Cool.
Yeah.
So one final thing, I'm going to wrap this up, but I just want to ask you before I finish. This is a question I ask everybody I interview. What's next? And what I mean by that is you have had an incredible career. You've done it all more than once. You've had the career that most people could dream of. You're full Penn and Teller, for God's sake. Everything that you've done, you've been successful at, right up to the Magic Circle and the gigs that you go and do. And even now during lockdown and COVID, you've still been able to create an income stream for yourself. And you're in demand as a performer, as a lecturer, and you've got an incredible reputation as well. Everybody knows who you are, and everybody holds you in very high regard. If you decided to retire today, your legacy is set. But I know that you're not going to do that. You're a very hardworking, ambitious guy. Is there anything left on your magical bucket list that you haven't yet achieved? Is there anything that you want to do moving forward that you'd like to hit?
I've had a book in the pipeline for a long time, but that's a kind of ongoing thing. I don't know if it's a bucket list thing, but it's something that I'd like to put out at some point. It's kind of weird because coming like that, you come across that question from time to time, and people look at me and think, I'm pretty ambitious, which is true to a degree, but I do tend to take stuff as it flows, and like I'm 44 years old now, and I tend to find that something comes along and I go, yeah, that's what I want to do. I'm going to do it. That makes me excited. So rather than sort of setting goals in the sense of going, I really want to do that, and then aiming towards it, I tend to just I live on a boat, I chill out, I wait. I'm really happy doing close-up magic. I'd like to get back to doing that, and something will come along and I'll go, yeah, that's a good project to get involved with, and I'll put my heart and soul into that. But I don't I've got a I have got I've been chatting to Russ a bit at BGT, and I've always said I wouldn't do BGT, but I woke up about a month ago and I've got a brilliant idea that's not been done before. So there's an exclusive for your interview. You may see that. Who knows? That might be something that I'm up to doing. Because
I don't think that BGT. Back in the day, you wouldn't touch it with a barge pole if you're a professional magician, but Russ has worked really hard on making it an environment where they're going to, not make you look like a dick, and they're going to support you and they're going to help you. Russ Stevens has got a lot to.
How lucky are we to have had Russ to do that? I mean, what an amazing legacy to have changed the perception of magic on something like that, you know, to where it's actually respected, and I mean, it's just, I mean, it's an incredible legacy. I really have a huge amount of respect for Russ in that sense. I really do. You know, it's a remarkable thing to have achieved. But yes, I've been I've always got on with Russ. I mean, even before he did BGT, you know, I've always liked Russ a lot. We've been good mates way before he did any of this. So yeah, so I have so yeah, so I've got an idea which has definitely not been done before anywhere in the world, and maybe we'll put something together and do that. So that's possibly in the pipeline. Other than that, mate, I'm just I remember doing it. I did an interview I did one of Richard Young's podcasts. Do you remember Richard Young's podcast?
Yeah, they were amazing.
Yeah, so I did a podcast with Richard, but it never got broadcast because I then stood for it was the only ever banned podcast for certain reasons. So I hope the same thing doesn't happen here. But anyway, but I said to Richard on it, and I genuinely totally mean this. You know, it's like there's a sort of perception of there has to be something next, or you have to go to the next level, or you have to achieve something else. It's like all I ever wanted to do was be really good at doing magic and go out and perform for people and be able to make a good living out of it. And I achieved that, and I'm really happy doing that. And I don't and provide, you know, and I really hope once COVID's out of the way, I can go back and do that. You know, I love traveling to different countries. I love performing close-up magic. I was really happy and made doing what I was doing, because I didn't feel like I needed to go and do anything else, or by all means I'll offer, you know, stuff to the magic community if I can, and you know, if there's anything I can give back in that sense. But I was, you know, very happy doing gigs and going to different countries and going and working in different places, and you know, I was perfectly content doing it. I didn't feel like I sort of felt like I got where I wanted to be, really, in that sense, you know. And like I say, if something comes along that's exciting, I'll go, yeah, great, let's do it, you know. But I don't, yeah.
That's perfect. That's absolutely perfect. You know what, Lee? Just like most magicians, or pretty much all magicians, everyone I've spoken to anyway, I've got a great deal of respect for you. I think you're one of the good guys in magic.
Oh, thanks, mate.
I really do. And
cheers.
No, seriously, I really mean it. I really do. And yeah, thank you so much. You have dropped so many golden nuggets and bombs on this interview, and I hope that the people that have watched this have picked up on those, because honestly, just some of the advice that you've actually talked about on this interview would make the world of difference to someone's career if they actually listen to what you've said and really listen and actually implement it. I think it's going to make the world of difference. So thank you, seriously, thank you, mate.
You're welcome, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure. Really nice to chat to you, and see you again.
Awesome. Guys, make sure that you leave a comment down below, and seriously, when Lee starts advertising his magic cruises, I don't know what they're going to be called, but when he starts advertising those, make sure you jump on, because I guarantee you I'm going to get the first tickets, and there's only going to be 6, so you want to make sure that you get on there. So the link will be down.
We'll put you in a little dinghy on the side, Craig.
I like that. I'm happy with that. Yeah, with a megaphone, so I can be heard. That's fine. Yeah. So the link is down below. Go check it out. Go jump on. Go and support this man, because he's an amazing guy. And yeah, thanks very much, Lee. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome, mate. Thanks a lot,
guys.
Thanks
very much, guys. Subscribe to the channel. I'll be back again tomorrow with another video. I'll see you then. Take care. Bye, everyone.